Okay, so this week we talked about the respiratory system, and to start us off, we wanted to talk about the inspiratory volume and expiratory volume. So, in regards to inspiration, breathing in, and that volume, it usually runs about 3,000 milliliters, whereas the expiration, breathing out volume is usually around 1,100 milliliters. So obviously the inspiratory volume is much larger than the expiratory. And altogether, this gives our lungs a total of about 6,000 milliliters. And then we also wanted to look at a diagram here, so let me get flipped over to the diagram. Okay, so this is my diagram of my little guy. So up here in the blue areas kind of represents our sinus cavities. Up here up top is our nasal cavity and our oral cavity. So of course we can breathe in through our mouth or nose. The nasal cavity is known to warm the air as it comes in, as well as moisten it. And it can filter any pathogens that come through as well. That then comes down to the pharynx, which again just really serves as a passage going from the nasal cavity to the larynx. So the larynx, again, is a passageway for the air to go through. It also helps filter out any foreign, or stops any foreign objects from entering the lungs, and it is also the site of the vocal cords. And that takes us down to the trachea, which connects the larynx to the bronchi or bronchus. So the larynx again is mainly a passageway for the air, but it also has a lining that can help filter out different particles. That, of course, as I said, takes you to the bronchi. So they move air from the trachea to the alveoli, and it can continue to filter air as well. And then we do have our bronchioles here, which then lead specifically to the alveoli, which is the actual, they're kind of like little gas sacs on the end of all the bronchioles. And that is actually where the gas exchange takes place. So the oxygen enters into the bloodstream, into capillaries, and the CO2 is removed from the capillaries to be exhaled. And of course our diaphragm. Down here we have our diaphragm, which contracts and changes in the pressure in the cavity, which actually helps us either breathe in or breathe out depending on the diaphragm. So that is our respiratory system and kind of how it works. And let me get flipped over again. Okay, and then we also wanted to talk about the cardiovascular system and the respiratory system in relation to each other. So as we previously learned, the cardiovascular system helps transfer nutrients such as oxygen around the bodies to the different organs. And then it helps remove waste products such as CO2 from the system. So as we discussed, the lungs are actually, or the respiratory system is where we actually draw in that oxygen and expel that CO2, that gas exchange, of course, happening in those little sacs in your lungs called alveoli through the capillaries. So obviously those two systems are very dependent on each other. We need the cardiovascular system to transfer everything around for us, and same, we need the respiratory system to bring in that oxygen and to excrete the CO2. And then we also wanted to talk about our breathing rate. So our average breathing rate, fun fact, is 12 to 16 minutes or breaths per minute. And that can change according to fear, pain, as well as exercise. And then finally, we wanted to talk a little bit about asthma. And asthma is simply the inflammation of your airway, and then it also produces a lot of mucus as well. And so anytime you encounter something that you're allergic to, pollen, dust, stuff like that, that irritates your system, it can cause the your air system to become more inflamed, which of course makes it very difficult to pass air through whenever it's kind of swollen and closed up like that. And during an actual attack, your muscles can actually tighten around that airway, restricting breathing even more. So that is our respiratory system.